Hey there guys, it's Metro and we are back again, this time taking a look at routes for Season 4. These are the routes that I plan on doing, but in the spreadsheet down below, big played out 1/routes, you'll be able to see if I updated any of them. I'll have an extra column for more like advanced routes or things we end up doing later in the season. From the preliminary dungeons we've done, I think that these work really well. And honestly, even though these dungeons are so forward and so strange, there's really only 2 dungeons with any interesting routes at all. So let's get into it. I'm going to explain all 8 routes. Paste spin will be in the spreadsheet. Again, big played out 1/routes. It'll be down below. Open this up and then just paste the raw data into the add-on and you'll have the route as it is. But we're going to get right into the most complicated one of the season, and that is Lower Karazhan. Now, Lower Karazhan is also the hardest dungeon of the season, and honestly by no small margin. So I think it's very logical to believe that this route is actually going to change in the future. But let me talk you through my preliminary ideas for this dungeon and so far why I believe the routes worked well. This is where we start in the dungeon. It's the very first room, and immediately we want to try to make a little skip here. These mobs are actually kind of dangerous and they are perfectly skippable. You just have to hug the left here. You have to kind of come around this corner quite tight and then go up and around and again hug the corner. It's very likely that this mob is going to aggro though, so if you fight it, it's not the end of the world. I would just really recommend pulling it with other stuff because it doesn't have a lot of health, even though it is dangerous, and it's really suboptimal to be pulling it on its own. So we're going to grab that and pull it up here if needed, but otherwise we'll just get these 4 here, and then we're going down the stairs into second balcony here, which is going to take us down to the first boss. While we're fighting this final pack in this area, we really need somebody to start the boss RP. Ideally that would be the healer, but either way then we're going to come down and do one of the 3 bosses. Now at this point, this is where the route really begins and might deviate from what a lot of people have been doing. What I am going to suggest here is simply die and respawn at the start. Now that you've killed the first boss, there's actually a shortcut open at the beginning of the dungeon, but it's going to help you avoid some very curious parts of the dungeon. But the ultimate reason we're skipping all this is this part right here. There are 7 of these mobs called the skeletal ushers, and their main mechanic is called flashlight. Long story short, it's going to do a ton of damage and it's going to blind you if you're looking at it. Now you can line of sight this. There's a variety of ways to not get killed by this mechanic, but again, in a pug situation, it's not great. And the big issue with these mobs is they're very difficult to combine. They only give 1.4% count as well, so you're oftentimes just fighting 2 over and over again. The reason they're difficult to combine though is because if all of them don't do it at the exact same time, you're simply just looking away or trying to line of sight the mobs in perpetuity. Like, you'll never actually be able to attack them. So to me, this whole segment seems like a definite skip. Now some people might just invis pod past there, but my alternative route is simply never coming anywhere close to those. So we come all the way back to the start when we die at the first boss. Then there's actually a little path that goes along the left here that takes you to a door that is now open, and it's going to take you down here past the guest chambers. There's going to be a little balcony to the left which you're going to come to the edge of. You'll see like clickable chairs. That's how you know you're on the correct one. You can also just simply jump down here and then you'd be in the grand ballroom area, but we want to go left first. We're going to fight this first pack here with one of these arcane wardens. But at this point in the dungeon, our goal here is simply get Lust back for Morose, and I am going to take a little detour and get this right side here also with the Dreadlord, but we are not actually going to go in here. I put this line here to kind of demarcate this part of the dungeon because this is kind of still in split number 2 here, where this is going to be in split number 3. The reason we're getting this pack here is because we have the Dreadlord, but also because these mobs are kind of blocking your entrance to this room. And what I want to do after we come back to this room is get a really big pull coming back down the stairs. And if they were here and the patrols and everything were here, it'd be very likely that you aggro stuff you don't want to aggro. But anyway, we're trying to get heroes, so what we need to do is go get even more trash out here in the kitchen area. Now again, this area is very dangerous, but you have your pick of the litter in this dungeon. There's a lot of dangerous trash. Almost really the whole dungeon is filled with it. So these 2 pulls I definitely want to split up. They're very dangerous. And then we're coming into this area that has multiple guardsmen. The guardsmen really don't have any one mechanic other than shield smash, which is actually a frontal AoE. It does a lot of damage too, but the big concern is going to be getting hit by it because it stuns you. So you as the tank are going to have to be very aware, and of course so were the DPS. Then we're going to go over to the left side here and be careful here because this is a very high volume room. I have accidentally pulled this entire room, and even though we did survive, we were fighting 6 separate guardsmen, so it was a huge scramble. It's probably very doable if you have mostly range, but if you have even more than 1 melee at all, yeah, you're probably not going to really want to pull this many guardsmen. Then at this point, there's 2 mobs here which we kind of do like to have for count. Even though they're past the stairs, I like to grab them and then pull them down into this room here, and the entire stables pulls have to be pulled one way or the other. Like, he will aggro them if you do not pull them, so figure that out in whatever way you'd like. Once we kill this boss, we're simply going to the next boss in the most expedient route possible, and there's really not much to explain at this point. Just pull whatever is left and whatever's in your way. You're going to need a lot of count in this area, and there is going to be a lot of count to get. There's some things like patrols and stuff that will come in and out of these rooms. So as I'm just saying here in the route, if you get to this point and you do not have count, you can fill with some of these rooms. There's a lot of trash in this general area. So really, once you get a two-man down, you're kind of just doing whatever you can do trash wise. So that's Lower Kara. It's very, very complicated. The route itself is very messy. Like, the actual thing that you're going to download into your add-on is very confusing because there's so many different areas. But hopefully that explanation helps. If you have any questions about that, let me know. Let's go to Upper next. The big things we're trying to do here is skip both of these. You can fight them. They're not that bad. Yeah, we definitely want to skip them if we can. Just use the tiles as a marker and run through the dead center. If someone aggroes it, it's fine. Just bring it up here and probably combine it with this guy. The big thing here is this room needs to all be pulled. Again, the boss will not be fightable without getting all of them, so it can be difficult. The boss actually can be aggroed and ran out here, and he will respawn. So what I do is I typically get this and then one of these packs and then grab the other three and pull them out. Just be aware that these worms do sanguine, so I'd imagine in the future they'll do things like bolster and everything else. Then at this point, we're going to skip this entire middle area. This first skip is actually very easy. This guy's going to pat from left to right, so we're just going to wait until he pats to the left, or if he's on the right and you don't want to wait, you can actually run around behind him and just come out the other side. These bats won't actually aggro. They'll be up there shooting you, but in order for them to aggro, somebody actually has to attack them, and if you taunt them, they'll fly down. So in case you ever want them for count, you can do that. Now this is a pivotal moment in the key here, and this is a really, really, really annoying mob. So yeah, this is like a must skip mob, I feel like, but the problem is there's no easy way to do it. The only easy way to do it is with an invis pot if you don't have a rogue, and unfortunately the potentially hardest boss in the dungeon is coming up right after that, so this may cause some issues. So what I would say is maybe just don't even skip this on Tyrannical, just kill it, but on Fortified I really feel like you must skip it. And even if you go over count on this route, it's really not a big deal at all, because this dungeon itself is, the timer is very easy. The only hard part about this dungeon is actually finishing it. We're gonna jump down and definitely gonna want to get the two dreadlords here. They give good count, and there's also a rat that's gonna be in between them. You can technically pull only the two dreadlords, but this rat is gonna pat in between them, so it's very likely that the first one is just gonna run into the second one. They're very, very far away, and you can actually get a rat from above and use it as a mount down here, but regardless, just try to get them and pull them efficiently and don't aggro anything else, especially this book. And then here we're going to do a little bit of a count fill. We want to try to get all of these mobs here together. It says here Mana Devourer 1 is representing the boss because it also awards enemy forces, so I don't know that for sure. I'll take their word for it, but it doesn't really matter because we're at a time in the dungeon where we actually cannot fail the route, but we can still mess up the timer. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come up here and then we're going to try to do another skip. The problem with this dungeon is there's just way too much trash for very little need, and a lot of the trash that's in here is very, very complicated and annoying. So we actually have basically only 3 mobs in this area, but they're 2 types of mobs that you really don't want to fight. At worst, you can pull this first pack, especially because it has the infiltrator. You know, if you did not do the skips that I recommended up until this point, though, you're going to be like 120% count in this dungeon. Again, that probably will not stop you from upgrading the key though, but regardless, this is the ideal route in my opinion. We are going to either try to run through. You could also just run through. Me as a night elf, I can do this very easily. I can just run through and shadow meld and then everything's gone. But yeah, obviously in Vispot, the problem is it's a very tight run if you're actually in Vispotting. So chest gives over 10% count, and if you've forgotten to get the full amount of count or something's gone wrong somehow, you can actually just grab a bat from before, just taunt it down and get it down, and it'll give a couple percent, and that'll be it. And the last boss is not actually here on the add-on, but of course it's here in the dungeon. Workshop, I really don't even feel like I need to explain. One thing I would say is I really recommend pulling all of these together, especially if you have like really high burst AoE. Getting them all killed in one pack is very, very good, and I feel like typically if you pull them slow, you're just like wasting time and you're not actually making it survivable. Like if like 2 or 3 of them explode and hit the group, they're going to die anyway, and there's like packs of 4 to 5 here, so even if all 4 other players actually die, it's like whatever, you kill all the trash, it's gone now. Now early on you can actually skip this person. It is very, very, very easy to do too. You just walk around. The problem is then you don't have enough count to do what else we want to do in the dungeon. So this is not an efficient pull, but it is one that is needed because there's really no other options. There's very limited amounts of count in this dungeon. And then after the boss, we're going to come up into another area that just has a bunch of forced count in it. As you see, we're going way over, but it's because we're picking up some dreadlords that again we don't necessarily need, but I feel like it's not a bad idea here because we're running through this maze. You're oftentimes going to be waiting for somebody to mess this up, you know what I mean? So this is like a good time to try to kill a dreadlord. Then we're going to make sure we pull both of these together just to be efficient. We're going to fly over here. We're going to get all of this stuff. And the big problem with skipping this pack, which I do think is an absolutely mandatory thing to do, is it has true sight. You can also use a warlock gateway. So just just make sure the Warlock knows where to put the gateway. It has to be on the upper lip here so you can actually get over the ledge, dismiss your pets, and run through and you're good. And even if you fail this somehow, just make sure you die and get on the other side of it, because you really cannot pull this guy, especially because you're just going to get way over count. And then that's it. That's the last boss, and that's the whole route. Junkyard's another one that's kind of complicated, and I leave a little disclaimer here that you kind of can't really make a single route for this because it's going to depend on which boss is first. The ideal situation here is going to be Gunker first. I really like the bot density and the trash density in here, and I think this makes for the best first lust, kind of just like a tank and spake boss without a lot of mechanics. And then, yeah, you know, whatever happens from there on. Yeah, this dungeon is literally like double upgrade on every single key. Even, you know, a lot of people are triple upgrading it, so really don't worry about the route. Just make sure you do something that's most conservative, because if people start dying and losing their bots, not only are they going to lose damage, but they're also going to tilt really bad, and that could actually disband a very, very, very easy key. We have the 2 dungeons from last season as well. Now, this is not the actual route I ran last season, but it's really nothing special here. Just be aware that these giants are very, very dangerous on high fort keys. They're very efficient count, especially if you can pull them with another pack. But the good thing is with this dungeon is we actually have a little bit more count now accessible later on in the dungeon. We are going to pull all of these again now, so it could be dangerous. But the cool thing is there's actually a couple dreadlords just hanging out here, and these give 1.7% each. So yeah, you can get this one. It's in the cave here in the route we do normally. We do not need it. Maybe you want it though, you know, on tyrannical weeks it could be very valuable to have. And there's also another one just hanging out on this far ledge over here. So a lot of times you can like kind of pull this trash and then maybe even grab this one. That would be kind of like a fail safe if you did something wrong in the first area. Back in that first area, I did just want to say though, if you do plan on skipping these Goliaths, be aware, because you can skip it easily, but if you're going to fight the mini boss, you really have very limited amounts of space to fight it. If you back up, you're going to back up into the giant, and if you go too forward, you're going to back up into the pack here, or potentially have the runners aggro this pack as well. So what I've been doing when we're trying to skip the giants is I've just been pulling this pack instead. Gives about the same percent as 2 giants, and then if we need an extra percent at the end for some reason, we can just grab one of the dreadlords. But that's Gambit. Streets is even easier. It's literally the exact same route I ran last season. There is just, you know, a lot more count because we're getting the dreadlords again. Up to you if you guys want to get them. I think it's not a bad idea because honestly, Soasmi is a boss that if you can kill really quick, it just makes the run a lot easier. And we're getting to the point now where we're actually just killing her before she even really does any mechanics. There's a bunch of them around. There's actually one up here in the little bazaar area. This one you could skip. You know, all of these can be skipped. There's really 6 optional dreadlords, and we're going to pull a few of them at least. But I like that about this season. You know, going over count doesn't really seem like it's like bankrupting you. Grimrail Depot we'll talk about next, and if you watch my videos on Grimrail Depot coming into the season, you know that my major complaint about this in the past was that there is just way too much count in this dungeon. It's a straight line dungeon. There is absolutely no way you can skip anything creatively. It has to be with an invis pop. But the fair part about this dungeon is that the timer is very generous, so this is never going to stop you from succeeding. And we could also just not pull this one guy, so that'll get us down to 108% as well. But I just really don't think it matters. This dungeon is literally just the epitome of a straight line. There's nothing to even note about this route other than right here. This is a pack that probably looks like you might want to break it up, but honestly, it's very, very difficult to do that, and especially with some affixes, it will probably be impossible to do because people will need to spread out or move around, and they'll just end up aggroing more of it. So I think you just got to commit to pulling all of this. Blizzard was very generous in that they put one of the infiltrators on one of the Farseers. So the Farseers used to be 3 of them. You need to kick them. It's very dangerous. This storm shield, it can also be purged now, so if it does get off, be ready for a quick purge. Mark the 2 Farseers, and they need to die first, and that's it. This dungeon is insanely easy this season. I'm very happy with how it's turned out because it really could have been a very, very hard dungeon. And then the only other question mark on this season is going to be Iron Docks, and I'm just going to tell you right now, this is not a dungeon I feel super confident with the route on, but I have spent a lot of time in there this last weekend, and I do believe we have what we're going to use moving forward. There's really 2 main things that you guys need to learn that I learned the hard way. One, all of this trash in the middle is extremely efficient count, but it's very, very dangerous. And really these first like 5 or 6 pulls are all that same way. It might look like a really good idea to try to combine both of these out of the gate and Bloodlust, and you can do that if you want, but just be aware there's going to be a lot of deaths in this area if people are not ready for some of these mechanics. So for fortified weeks especially, I like to just take it slow. But I do think we're going to skip this middle moving forward, and the way you do that is just hug. There's a little fence here. You're going to hug this. You can get this guy. It's, you know, not a problem to get him. A lot of times people will aggro him by accident, so I've just added him to the route. We're gonna kill the boss. I would definitely recommend lusting on the boss. It's kind of like a big time sink, honestly. It's not even really dangerous. It's kind of like a time sink. And then we are gonna run over here and get a few mobs. So again, these mobs are not really needed on the route, but we are gonna pick them up, and I'm gonna show you why in a second. Then we're gonna come down here and do the iron stars. Now there's a variety of things you should know about the iron stars, but in terms of routing the dungeon, I just want to let you know that if you do the most basic way to kill mobs with the iron stars, like just shoot them 3 in a straight line, because there's a target cap on them, they will not actually kill all of the mobs. In my experience, there's always 3 left over from these middle portions. But just be aware that if you don't come out of this split with perfect count, it's not a big deal. There's actually a lot of free count at the end doing this exact route. The big thing here is what I highlighted in green. Ideally, you want to get all 3 of these packs together first and then use the final iron star. You're going to end up aggroing this stuff too. There's a way to not have that happen. Basically, you have to like make them cross over, and then these 2 can actually get this entire middle, and then this third one can get only the stuff at the end. We used to actually grab all of this stuff back in the day, but okay, that's not going to happen obviously nowadays, so that's fine. Let's just grab what we can. The big thing is this pack here. You really got to take a wide berth around these packs because this pack takes a while to come out. You quickly grab it. Even if you want to stay on your mount, grab it and then bring it back. It's going to take a few seconds, so in pugging, it's very unlikely that you're going to pull this off. Just if you fail, just make sure that whoever has the star hits this labor. If you do not kill this labor, this pack is unpullable. A lot of times, like, parts of the pack will die, and the laborer will be one of them, so if so, then you're good. You can just pull the rest into the other stuff. But either way, kill the stuff, kill the boss, and then we're moving on. Now, in the old days, we used to skip a lot of this stuff, and I do think a route can materialize that we'll be doing that again. But as of right now, I don't think it's that dangerous. You can actually skip this pack. We are skipping this pack. Both of these are skippable, so if you want to get more trash at the beginning or even up here, you can do that. But anyway, we're going to pull these as like a safety net. This is a pack that is almost always going to be on the route, but it's there as a safety net, and you know, it gives a dreadlord, so it's kind of efficient anyway. And then we have one last dreadlord here that gives 1 full percent just in case something went wrong. At worst, if something went wrong, this is 3.5% here, so that should get you through it. It's easily skipped if you want to skip it like we do. You just hug the boxes, hug the wall, basically bump your shoulder into the wall, and that's it. So those are my routes. Again, you can check them out down in the spreadsheet down below, and I hope it works out. I think there'll be a lot of changes, but regardless, I'll keep them updated. If you guys have any questions or you see anything you think I should take a look at, feel free to leave a comment. Otherwise, I hope it helps. Thank you for watching. We will see you guys in the next video.